This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. What's up, guys? Will here. Welcome to episode 1 of the 148 scale Airwolf build, and just want to let everybody know that I'm going to do a little bit of a different format on this. Usually when I do videos and I do build videos, I'm doing Star Trek models like I mentioned before, and a lot of times I'm posting those videos on a Star Trek modelers group on Facebook. So, you pretty much expect posting on Star Trek modelers Facebook group, although we do get a lot of guys that have never built a model. Usually the guys on there have built at least one. So since this video isn't being posted to that page, obviously because it's not a Star Trek model, I'm going to be posting these and sharing these with Facebook Airwolf fan page. So in posting these, I want to make sure, that, like I said, this model from Aoshima is getting ready to get re-released in November. And, some of you guys might be interested in building it. So for you guys that may not have ever built a model, or may have very little experience building a model, I'm going to break this down as much as I possibly can. Usually I kind of say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and then I do it, and then I come back on camera and it's done. So this one I really want to try to take my time with it and be as involved in the process as possible and show it on video. So that's what I'm going to try to do on this. So you guys are used to seeing my videos, this will be a little bit probably, I don't know, it'll be much of a slower pace. It's just going to show a lot more detail than you may need. But it's to help anybody out there that may want to build this model when they do the re-release in November. November 2021 is where we're at, in case you see this sometime later. But so once that comes out, hopefully you guys, if you want to build this model and you haven't had any experience building models, you'll be able to follow along and be able to get it done. So give me a minute. I'm going to put you on the bench and we're going to talk about what we're going to look at today. Alright guys, so here we are. I've got some parts laid out and we'll talk about those in a minute. But basically I was talking about a different format from what I usually do. So what I want to do is, what I typically do on my Star Trek models, there's a certain way I like to go. I like to do the saucer section and the secondary hull, and there's, depending on the model, but there's a way I like to go through it and do my models. But in this case, this one here, I think it's going to be easier if you guys that maybe haven't built a model before or have little experience building one, to just go through it from front to back. So first thing I want to talk about, though, before we get into actually building this, is the paint. So if you haven't built a model before, one of the first things you want to do when you get a model, when you open the box up and before you even start building it or put any paint on or that, make sure you take your parts and wash them real good. Just use some Dawn dish detergent, regular Dawn dish detergent. Don't use the antibacterial stuff, because my understanding is that can leave a bit of a film on these as well and cause some problems. So just get you some regular Dawn dish detergent and wash your parts, and just make sure they're well rinsed. Let them air dry. Don't worry about wiping them down with that, because you can get all kinds of other stuff on there. For instance, I have cats, so if I do I got to be careful not to get a whole lot of cat hair on my parts, when they're running around here. So, just wash them real good, let them air dry, and then we can start looking at painting. Now, I've already washed my parts. Let me rephrase that. I've already washed these model parts, and I've already put a coat of primer. What I like to use for primer, and you can use a lot of things. People use. I've seen people use some types of automotive primers, and as a matter of fact, I usually use a black sandable primer when I do light blocking on models. So it definitely works out well for that. But what I like doing on the outside, because I've never had an issue with it, not to say that people haven't had some conflicts with it, but I always like to use the tomato, however you want to pronounce it, the Tamiya Fine Surface Primer. it's white. They also make a gray surface primer, which I use as well, but the fine surface primer is white. And I like to use this, especially where there's parts where there's going to be a lot of detail, because it doesn't mess up the detail. And on this model in particular, when you get it and look at it, because I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but you've got a lot of little rivets on here, little fine detail parts on here. So I used the Tamiya fine surface primer, and gave these a light coating. Don't want to drench them down too much, just put a little bit on it, let it dry, and then put maybe a second coat on it and let that dry. And I've got these propped up now because when I paint them, I don't like to just set them down, because one side's inadvertently going to get set down and messed up. Well, it's wet still, so I like to prop them up and just let them dry out. So these have already been washed, primed, they're ready to go. And before we get into that, now I've told you I like to use the Tamiya fine surface primer, however you want to pronounce it. Now, talking about the paints, the first page we're going to have on here is talking about the painting, and it's going to list all of our paints on here. And don't worry about these codes over here. That's for all the painting areas we got to do back here, which I'll go over as we get to it. But just to talk about the paints now. Any of you guys that have watched any of my previous build videos, or you've read my comments on the Star Trek Modelers Facebook group page, I'm not the type of person. I do like to try to do as close to the studio models as possible when I do these, but I'm not going to drive myself crazy over it. I don't get into these arguments where it's like, oh, this is the only correct paint you can use. This is how you have to paint it. This is the color this has to be. I don't get into all that. Now, when we go through this model, I'm going to basically go by the paint guide, but there's a couple things that I think are going to need to be done different, just because from looking at the pictures of Airwolf and all that, I think there's some things that aren't necessarily the same color as what this guide calls for. So, and like I said, we'll talk about that when we get into it. But don't drive yourself crazy with getting these exact colors, okay? I'll give you an example. It doesn't have to be a specific brand either, because a lot of these are just very general and generic. So to give you an example, the painting guide calls for, it just says white, black, yellow, blue, silver, and then there's a couple of colors that are very specific. The white, for example, well, what shade of white? There's different shades of white. There's just a plain white, and there's flat, there's gloss. It doesn't really say whether it's a flat or a gloss paint. And so, you kind of have to use your own judgment as to what you want to use on these. Don't go crazy with, trying to look at pictures and say, oh, well, it looks like... I do look at the pictures, but I'm not going to go nuts about it. But, so anyway, for the white, for example, I've got two different colored whites here. Actually, two different colors. So I've got the Tamiya XF2. Let me move this light over here so this shows up a little better. XF2, which is flat white. And you can use gloss. The only reason I use flat is because I'm probably, at least on certain parts of this, I'm going to do a matte clear coat on it. So regardless of what I use, it's going to end up as a matte finish. So I can use the flat white, I can use the gloss, but once I put that matte clear coat on, it's going to be a matte finish regardless. So I've got the XF2 flat white, which I will be using on some parts, and talking a little bit about the hull colors, what colors Airwolf actually painted. I've got, I did some painting tests. I've got my little swatch here, and you can see on the back here I've done a couple different. Now the camera's not going to pick up necessarily the way it looks to me, so, but you can definitely see there's some color differences at least. Now these two blacks here are actually NATO black. It's the same color. It's just one is an AK Real Colors brand, and the other one is Tamiya. Tamiya NATO black. So, and I think, I don't remember which one's which, but you can see there's a little bit of a difference in those shades, even though it's supposed to be the same color. This one all the way over here on the end is gunmetal, and it's just straight gunmetal. So, you've got a couple different color choices there as far as the black. And then down here you can see I did a color in just a plain white Tamiya fine white primer there. And I did that so you can see the contrast, because this color here is insignia white. It looks gray, but it's actually insignia white. So you can see that, you know, just saying white, there's a couple different colors or different you know, shades you can choose from. So, you know, it's up to you as to what you want to do. You want to paint the main body of, you know, Airwolf just plain, you know, flat black or gloss black, or that's fine. You know, you paint this whatever way it looks right to you, and whatever paint you have accessible. So now, that being said, here's what I went with. Now, John Black, thank you for your for mentioning this. He now I already know that the original model, I say the original model, but the original aircraft that was used for Airwolf was painted Phantom Gray Metallic. And Phantom Gray Metallic is mainly an automotive paint. I did find a spray can of it, but it would have cost me like $30 to have it shipped. And I'm not that worried about it to where I'm going to pay $30 just to have a can that I'm probably only going to use once, and maybe twice if I do another one of these. But, you know, and I may find another use for it, but I'm not going to pay $30 for a can of paint, can of spray paint. You know, it's not that big of a deal to me. So, John Black, what he had mentioned was he had found a color close to that, which was called Anthracite Gray Metallic, I believe. Let me double check, and let me turn my phone to you because I don't want to be giving his information away. Yeah, it's Anthracite Gray Metallic. That's a color he had found and mentioned that he thought was pretty close to the Phantom Gray Metallic. So I did find a bottle of that on HobbyLink, and I'll put the link for it down the bottom in the notes here. But I did find a bottle of it from HobbyLink. It's a Revell Germany paint. So I ordered that from HobbyLink. It'll probably be here next week, and we'll take a look at that, because I'm not this. What I did was I just took the clear one of the clear bodies, because I said I probably wasn't going to use these anyway. And I just took the clear one and decided just to use that as kind of a test bed. So the other side of this, when I get that paint in from HobbyLink next week, I'll do the other side of this in that color, and we'll see, you know, what the difference is. So what I did here right now was I took some of that gunmetal, which I've got right here in a spray can. It's a T38 gunmetal from Tamiya, and I sprayed it. And when I looked at it, to me it was just too silverish. And like I said, the camera probably may not pick it up as much as what I can see here looking at it. But it's just too silverish and shiny, and so I just didn't like it. So what I did was, and it's got a lot more gray to it than what I think is supposed to be in that paint, or at least what it appears to be on the actual Airwolf. So what I did was I decided, well, let me try taking some semi-gloss black, and I just dusted it over top of that gunmetal. And I'm actually like the results of it. I think it looks pretty good. It's got a bit of a sheen to it. At certain angles, it's got a bit of a gray, a little bit of a silver grayish tint to it, since this is supposed to be a gray. But I took a little bit of that black and just toned it down, that gray down a little bit. And I kind of like it. I like the way it looks. But I'm going to take a look at that Anthracite Gray Metallic when I get it in next week. And we'll see what I think of that one. We'll see how it goes on, and you know, maybe it'll be close to this. If it's anything close to this, you know, it'll be nice. But I've got to look at it and decide whether I want to do it this way. Certainly, it's easier to just have the paint and only have to do one coat instead of this way, where I've got to do the gunmetal and then come back over it and evenly, you know, get a light coat of black on here to cut down that gunmetal. But anyway, I think it turned out pretty well doing it that way, so that might be the color I go with. But like I said, I'm going to look at this anthracite and we'll see. Now on the bottom here, and again, I don't know how the camera's picking it up now. It looks white against that black body, but that's actually the insignia white that I talked about. And like I said, you can tell there's a bit of a difference between regular white, which is the line there, and the insignia white, which is, it almost has like a grayish. But The reason why I like that color for this is because this was a metallic, or not a metallic, but a custom pearl gray. Custom basically meaning that we have no idea what the actual color is because it was custom. We don't, unless somebody knows what the mixtures were that were used to make that custom color. We know it was a pearl, it was a custom pearl. So, but the fact that it was a custom pearl gray, the fact that it says gray in it makes me think that it's got to be a bit of an off-white. It can't be a pure white. So I think this actually goes pretty well with that. It may look a little grayer in this light and on this camera than what it looks like in person. But in person, I'm looking at it and it definitely looks pretty good to me. So those are the two colors I think I'm going to go with. Like I said, when the anthracite comes in, I'll take a look at that too. But I'm pretty comfortable with these two colors if this is what I need to go with. I like the way it looks. So that's my thoughts on that. How you want to paint yours, like I said, it's up to you. You can do a black, gloss black, flat black, paint it purple if you want. It's not my model, it's your model. So, at any rate, just that's my thoughts on that, and that's what I'm looking at. So, but another example of how these colors are different. Let's take a look at the yellow, for example. All right, when we get to the point where we start on the interior cabin, and I'll break these codes because some of this just is it's just the code just about. So, for example, on this panel here, where it's talking about the roof of the interior, this says PH1 or paint. P is just means paint, and H1 is your color code. So we look back here. H1 is white. All right, but it then says 50% plus P for paint, H for 50%, which means they want you to mix these paints to come up with a different color than what you may be able to find. So basically, they want you to mix your H1 and your H4. Your H1 is white, your H4 is yellow. So when I do that, and I did a test of this, I've got two different yellows. I have the Tamiya XF3 flat yellow, and just by looking at the cap of this, it looks much brighter than this Vallejo Model Air medium yellow. Now, Vallejo doesn't have, at least I didn't see it in my model shop yesterday, it didn't look like they had a plain yellow. It looks like they've got a light, a medium, and a dark. Medium is what I went with because it just says yellow, so I'm going in between. But this is 71.002 medium yellow. And when you look at them, the Tamiya, and again, I don't know how this camera's picking it up. They may actually look the same in the camera. But this one, in looking at it here, looks brighter than the Vallejo. So I did a test of these just to see. But the other part of the test I did with that was, instead of using the Tamiya XF2, I used the Insignia White Vallejo Model Air. And that's a 71.279. So I used the two Vallejos together and the two Tamiyas together, and these are the colors I came up with. Put this light over here where it shines down there so you can see it. But you'll see the colors look pretty much the same. So, that's what I'm saying. Don't get too hung up on having an exact color, because if you're anywhere close to it, it's going to come out looking the same anyway. They both look about the color of mustard. So, just to show you, just don't go crazy over having an exact paint or that. Sometimes you got to go with what you can find. And so anyway, that's just showing another example of that. So I've got these. I'm actually going to use probably the Tamiya colors, because I got to pick one. I don't want to use different ones. So I'd like to try to stay with the same brand paints whenever possible. So since I've got most of these, and some of these are going to be Model Master paints because I just happen to have that color already. I didn't want to go out and buy another Tamiya paint when I've already got that color. So for example, I already had Gloss Flat Black, and it's a Model Master paint. Bring this light over here. And that's a Model Master paint, which these are next to impossible to get anymore because they don't make them anymore. So but you can get a gloss black, any black. You're supposed to they want you to have a gloss black which it just says black. It doesn't say gloss or flat, but down here it says flat black. So I'm going to take this one to mean it's supposed to be a gloss black. So, which in that case tells me that since that just says black and it's supposed to be a gloss black, that's probably a gloss white. Matter of fact, under French it says blanc brillant. That's a bright white, or sometimes means gloss white. So I'm going to guess that they want this to be a gloss white, a gloss yellow, a gloss blue, and then your silver, and then you get down here to the flat black. So but anyway, that's what I'm using. One of the yellow. For the blue, I'm using XF18 medium blue. Again, a medium shade of that color because it just says blue. But it's an XF18 medium blue is what I'm going to use. It says silver, but I don't really have a silver. I've got an aluminum and oh, I forget what the other one is. I've got an aluminum color and I've got another metallic, like a metallic silver color. Oh, steel. I've got steel. Now steel is a bit black, not black, but a bit too dark for me for where we're going to be using this. So I think I'm going to go with the aluminum because I already had that. There's no point in me buying there's no point in me buying the silver when I've got this. It's about the same color. You know, I did a test on that as well. So the left is like a silver and the right is my Model Masters aluminum. So that's the color I'm going to go with. It's basically the same thing. It's not that big of a difference to it. Then it says the flat black, which again I already had in the Model Masters. Now for the bright blue I went with the light sky blue, which I already had. This is an AK brand, or True Colors. And again, I don't know, that almost looks like it's got kind of greenish in the camera, but it's not. It's definitely like a light blue, like a baby blue. So we've got that. And then they asked for a metal black, which I'm taking to mean gunmetal, because that's about as black metal as I can think you're going to get. So I'm going with gunmetal when it calls for that, which again I'm using that for the body, but I'm dusting over it with the semi-gloss black. So I got that. I've got a XF15 flat flesh is what I'm using when it asks for flesh color, which basically you're only using on like the hands, I think, of the little characters you got to put in there. Neutral gray, I actually had a Model Masters neutral gray. Again, you're going to have to find the equivalent. It does give you neutral gray. Now, neutral gray doesn't give you a number to use, but it shouldn't be that hard to find a neutral gray. A lot of people you can use either a light gray or a medium gray as well for that. Then it asks for a gray violet. Gray violet, which I've seen this in a couple different brands, but the only one my hobby shop had was in Tamiya spray can form, and it's AS4. Let me turn that around for you. AS4 gray violet. Now they do make it. Was it AK? I think makes it in a bottle. Humbrol. There's a couple brands I saw that make this gray violet, so you can just do a search for it and find it and see what your local hobby shop has, or depending on where you have to order it from. And then for all my, it goes into clear red, clear yellow, clear blue. These are all the Tamiya's clear colors. So that's clear red, which is an X27, clear yellow, which is an X24, and then clear blue, which is an X23. So I've got all those colors. And then it asks for a black gray, and it gives you an RLM66 number. So what I did was I looked around my hobby shop, and I found a black gray in the Real Colors AK. This is a RAL7021 on here though, but it is a black gray, so that'll fit the bill for that. And then it asks for a gray, just a FS36622, which again I matched that number up to a camouflage gray, FS36622 in the Real Colors AK brand. So it's kind of like a lighter gray, it looks like. So I've got that matched up based on the numbers. And then finally medium sea gray, which they only had in the spray can at my hobby shop. It's an AS32 in Tamiya, medium sea gray. So Got all those colors. Now the only thing not on this paint list that you're going to need if you're trying to do the model as close as possible to the real life one, you're going to need a little bit of olive drab, because where your guns pop out on the side here, that is the interior, that is olive drab. So if you want to get that painted, and you don't honestly, I got a lot of paints that you only be painting small areas for. If you are not a modeler and you don't do a lot of models and you just want to do this model, I would not worry about investing in every single one of these colors like I did. I do a lot of models and I will use these paints at some point, so I know it's not a waste to buy them, because I can always mix paints if I need another color, or I'll find something I need to paint with it. So if you are doing this model and you're just going to do this model and you're not big into doing models, but you're an Airwolf fan and you want to model, don't worry about going into all these different paints. Some of these you won't even hardly use to where you're going to notice that if you don't use them. And you'll see when we go through the directions, like these clear colors, a lot of those are going to be used in areas where you're not even going to notice if you don't use them. So I wouldn't worry about those. You'll see as we go through this what colors you really need. I would say you would need a black, you would need some type of white, definitely for the body, and probably some grays. And you might be able to get by with that, and that's probably about all you'll need to do a decent job on it. So that's my take on it. That's my take on the colors. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take give me a break for a minute. I'm going to get set up, and we're going to come back and we are going to start diving into stage 1 of this assembly. So give me a couple minutes and I'll be right back. Alright guys, so I got my desk cleared off just a little bit, so I got a little more room to work with here. So anyway, starting off, the first 2 steps you have here, to me, I'm actually going to start from the bottom and work my way up. It seems like it's going to be easier than just coming down here and then jumping around. So the first things I want to point out is you're only going to need 3 sections to do this portion here. And you have to excuse me, I got some stuff on my tree here. So what you're going to need is you're going to need this one that has like your rotor for the back here on it. It's got a couple parts. You can see where I painted these red. It's just so I know, hey, these are the pieces you need for this stage. So I've got those kind of singled out. So you're going to need this part up here and this part down here. So you're going to need that. And then on this tree here, you're only going to need one piece off of it. Just one little part here. As you can see, I've got the red beside. This is the part that's got your top for the cockpit and your back wing there that goes on the tail. So that's where that one piece you're going to need there. And then this one here, you're going to need a lot of parts off for this stage. So the one with your rotors on it, you're really going to need quite a few pieces off. So you can see in red there all the pieces I identified that we're going to need for this stage. So starting off at the bottom, you're going to need this block here. This is block number 37. And what I recommend you do is get a pair of snips or a small pair of scissors and cut these off the parts tree, because what can happen if you twist these off, you can also use your hobby knife too. You're really going to need one of those if you're going to do models. But what can happen is if you don't cut these off and you try to twist and break them off, some of these smaller delicate parts you could actually break them. Instead of them coming off the parts tree, you end up breaking it and half of it's still stuck to the parts tree. The other thing that can happen too is when you go to twist these off, it'll take a chunk of the part out that you're going to need to use, and then you've got to do some puttying and fixing it up. So anyway, once I've cut that off, I'll come back with my hobby knife and I'll just take that little bit of sprue that's on there. I'll just trim it off. Just be careful. You won't take too much out of it. Okay, got that side good. That one. Alright, so we've got that pretty well cleaned up. So that's our bottom part there. And then what we're going to need is these 2 sections, and it breaks it down for you right in this block here. So we've got this part. Actually, we've got to do something else to this part too, I just noticed. So we got 37 is the part we just had. Remember that one little part I told you we're going to need? That's part 67. And that's this piece right here in the middle. So we're going to need that part. And what I'm going to do is, some of these are really tight to get these scissors into. There we go. So now we've got that little part. Do the same thing, come back, and I'm going to trim it up a little bit. Take the remaining piece of that sprue off. Now, like I said, you guys that are used to seeing some of my videos, this is going to be a little slower paced. A little slower paced than what I typically do. Typically I would just do what I said and then come back and do it. But like I said, I think for the sake of you guys that maybe are seeing this video that don't have a lot of experience building models, and you kind of want the simple version of how to do this stuff, I think it's better for me just to go through each step. All right, so we got those two parts, and then we need part number 38. Part number 38 we're going to need. And that's kind of a flat piece. It should be, there's some of my covers on here from when I put my primer on. So it's going to be this piece right here again, right next to that first piece we took off. So cut that off. Now some of this I am going to jump through because I don't think you want to sit here and watch glue dry, the glue dry on a part. So what I'm going to do is get to a point, when I got to glue it, I'm going to leave you for a little bit, glue it, give a little bit of time for that glue to set, and then we'll come back and take a look at where we're at. So those are all the three parts we need to complete this section. So what I like to do is I like to take, I've got two different types of glue here. I've got this Extreme Power Medium and this Extreme Power Thin. Now the medium is real good for just your general use. I use this more than anything. But the thin, if I've got a part, and I need to get glue in between like a tight spot and I really need to just flow in there, I'll use the thin. But for the most part, I just use the medium glue. Now you can use any glue. I've used Gorilla super glue. Any CA glue is what I use. You can use a model glue too. Some people frown upon using CA glue, but I've had good experience with it. So you can use a model glue, or you can just go to your local hardware store. If you got a hobby shop nearby, that's fine. But if you don't have a hobby shop, go to your local hobby store and just get some Gorilla Glue, super glue, or any type of CA glue will work just fine. Unless you want to use model glue, then that's a decision you have to make. So anyway, we've got those parts, and what I like to do is I like to take, usually have something set out for this already, to keep the glue from making a mess. You don't want to take the glue and start dabbing it on the part, because what happens sometimes is the glue will flow out quicker than what you expect, and you end up with a big gob of it, and then when you try to take it off, it takes your paint off, and it can just make a mess and make it more of a headache. So what I'll do is I'll take this little cup here. I usually just have a little plastic tray, but I don't know where it's at right now because I wasn't prepared for this. I'll just dab a little bit of the super glue in there. Set that back over there. I've got a little pick. You can use toothpicks, anything that's got a bit of a point on it to let you, be a little precise in where you're sticking this. So I'll just get a little bit of that glue on the tip of this, and I'm going to drop it right down in there. Okay, got that in there, and then this shows this. There's a little opening on this part here. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but there's a little bit of an opening on one end, and what it wants you to do is have that facing this direction. If you can see where I'm looking, this direction on this piece down here. So what I'm going to do is take this, drop this down in here. Get it turned around there. This is where I need my tweezers. A little pair of tweezers come in handy too. Whoops. Here we go, parts flying all over the place. And this may not, if it doesn't fit in this hole properly, I may have to do a little bit of sanding. I'm hoping it's just going to slide down in there once I can get this thing lined up properly. It'll take too long doing this, my glue ain't going to be any good. Yep. And this is this is why a lot of time when I do models, I don't do it on camera because it takes too long, and you're basically sitting there watching me fiddle with the smallest part there is. If this is supposed to slide down in here, it's not going in very easy. It might be because this little piece here is supposed to compress some. Pick and see if we can press this a little bit if it slides in there. Yeah. There we go. Finally, went down in there. And I'm not too worried about it if I scratch paint a little bit on this, because I'm going to come back and touch it up again anyway, because this primer isn't the final color, but what I want to do is get some of these parts together. And then I'll come back with my color I want to use. So this part, and this part sits down on here. It looks like we've got to center that up a little bit. So basically you've got these notches here. Get my little pointer out and get the glue off. You got these stubs here on this side, and then same on this. It looks like what they want you to do is to match those up, and then that hole is there. So what I'm going to have to do is, because I've primed this and it looks like this is a contact point, I'm going to scrape a little bit of this paint off of here, so that way I've got a good attachment point for the glue. We'll do the same on the bottom of this, about where it's going to make contact at, because you're not going to see this part anyway. But alright, so we'll take our glue, put it on there, and we'll put our part on there and line it up. Alright, so that's what we got. That's where our part is right now. We've got 3 pieces together, woohoo! So, at any rate, we've got that together, and let's see, we can do this next part while we let that dry. But the next part is basically going to be this section here. We're going to put these 2 halves together, and that's parts 27 and 28. I did warn you guys this is going to be a little bit slower of a video than my usuals, right? Alright, so this one we've gotten our 1 piece off of that we need, so I'm going to set that aside because we don't need it right now. And it just leaves these parts here to confuse us. So, here's our parts right here that we need, 27 and 28. So again, and this is one of those ones where if you try to twist it, you could easily break that part off right there. And then you're doing more gluing than what you should have needed to. Cut that off. Trim it up real quick. Same thing here. Trim it up a little bit. Alright. Now these 2 parts, 2 halves are going to go together here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape the primer off. Just scraping it off the inside parts that are going to make contact, because you don't want that paint interfering with getting a good contact on there and these parts sticking together. So just scrape it off. Now another option you could do is you could just mask off the parts where you're going to be adhering it, but these are such small parts, I get the feeling that would probably be a bit more of a pain than what I want to deal with. So a little bit of glue on here. Now after I show a couple of these steps a couple times for you guys that may not have much experience doing models, I'll probably step this up a bit. I don't want to be taking until first of the year to get this model done, but probably step it up a little bit once I've shown how to do this a couple times. We've got to get these two halves on here together. There's a little pin there. I've got a little guide pin there. I got to get matched up. There we go. All right, so we got that part glued together. A little bit of a seam line there. I'm gonna take care of. I'm gonna do a little light sanding. I've got a piece of I think this is probably 600 grit sandpaper, and I'm gonna sand that seam down after this dries. So I'm gonna let that dry, and I'll sand that seam a little bit, and that way when I go to paint it, you won't see that seam on the that part. So give me a little bit. We'll come back and we'll take a look at where we're at. Alright guys, so I got our next parts ready to go. I've already cut off parts 17, 29, and 30 off the tree here. And I think the easiest thing to do is going to be to put 17 on first so I can see where these other two pieces need to sit. So get a little bit of glue on here. And these two parts here are notched, so you'll see the notches and where this needs to sit. But there's notches on the bottom of that. There's notches on the top here, so you need to line these notches up and you'll feel it kind of fall in place there. Wiggle it a little bit. Alright, so we know that's in place. Give that a minute to dry. I do have a little bit of it was a CA glue, I forget what it's called, the CA spray stuff you spray on the CA glue and it makes it speed up. I know Boyd over Truck Works calls it Kicker, but mine says something else on it. So, but it's basically the same thing. So we get that part on, and on these parts here you got a little indent. Oop, I missed the sprue on this one. Didn't clean my sprue up. That one off there, and that one off there. There we go. Alright. So, what we do is take our parts here. There's a thinner side and a thicker side to this. So the thicker side here goes down, and that thinner part goes up. And what you're going to see on here is the part that goes in, there's a little bit of an indent. A little bit of an indent right there on that part. So that's the part that's going to face in and glue. So I'm just going to take a little bit of glue here and dab it on the inside here. This part here, it looks like needs to fit. What I'm trying to figure out is it shows it goes like that. I gotta get this part in here though. Hello. Okay. There we go. So this little top piece here, the smaller piece on this part here, needs to slide up. You can see in here, it needs to slide into this little notch right here. You can see how that one is in there. So that's how that needs to be. Put a little glue on the inside of this. get this one put in place. Here we go. Slides right into place. And this is just just keep a towel around so I can wipe stuff off on it. But so that's what we've got right now. You can see that part right here illustrated on the guide, right where my thumb is. That's what we got. So our next step is to attach this to our bottom part here. And what I want to do is let this glue set up a little bit. I'm just going to actually let it sit right here on this, right here on my pointer. I'm just going to let it sit there for a couple minutes and let it dry. And then we'll come back and we'll get that attached. So stay tuned. Alright guys, so went ahead and got that part all assembled. Went ahead and connected, put those two pieces together. One thing I'm going to say is when you go to put this together, test fit it first. This, where the base of this connects to down here, wasn't sitting evenly, so I had to come in with my my hobby knife and kind of try to level it out a little bit. It wasn't quite flat. There was a little stub on there I had to cut off or trim down, and so I got that trimmed down. That's flat, and then you just want to glue each of these in place and put a little glue on the bottom there, and that'll glue that whole piece there together. So that's all together. I did come in and do just a little bit of detail, and I don't know if the camera picks it up, but I just came in with a little bit of that aluminum and just put it on the tip of my pointer here and just put a little drop on there just to make it look like there's some bolts on there. Came in and did a little bit of brass on here, on this section right here, this little connecting rod. And so we got that done, and our next step is to connect or put in parts, looks like parts 18 and parts 41. And I already cut off part 18. Part 18 is just a little disc here that goes on there. So cut that off, and then 41 I did some painting on as well. I did a little bit of aluminum on here, black for this little boot down the bottom here. And then on the painting, it calls for this whole thing here to be white. And when I look at the pictures, of Airwolf, I'm seeing a little bit of a brass color to it, and I don't know if it's going to show up on the camera there. But even this part here, even the shaft here looks a little bit of brass, but that could just be the lighting. But I can see some silver and brass to it. So do a little bit of a wash on that, and the wash is basically I took some of this, I already did it actually. Took some of this titanium gold that I'm actually using on my NX01 build, and took some pledge here and diluted it down enough to where basically you just got, it's really runny, it's kind of watery actually. Basically all I do is take a brush and just run a little bit over this silver part here just to kind of cut down that silver some. And matter of fact, I'm going to dab just a little bit more on here. No, I don't want to do that because I'm going to mess with this part. I'll do it in a little bit. But just cuts down that silver just a little bit, you know, so it doesn't look too overly bright. So pull this light over here again. So that's what I got on that part right now. I didn't mean to use a gloss, but that's all right. Like I said, it doesn't matter really because I'm going to do a matte finish on this anyway with my clear coat. So, and I mentioned before about the photo with Andrew Probert standing next to Airwolf, and there it is. And happy birthday to Andrew. His birthday is September 5th, so good timing. But anyway, that's kind of one of the reference photos I'm using to put this together. And on this piece, there's these little tabs on. There was one on this side, but I already took it off. But you can see this little piece here that kind of bends a little bit. That part there you can just kind of take off, and it'll just fall right off. It's very thin. So I'm come in and cut this part off now. All right, and we got that piece. And I'm going to come in with my hobby knife and just take that little bit of stub off there. And a little bit off top of this too, so this sits nice and flush when I put it into the rotor blades. There we go. Alright, so that's what we've got. We've got that part. And we've got our disc here, and that just slides on. And they don't want you to use glue on this assembly, because if you do, you won't be able to spin the propeller. So if you want to be able to turn a propeller, you've got to leave that separate. That's kind of a tight fit in there too. So I might have to work that around a little bit. It should be good to go. But there we go. That's how that part looks. So it's all together. Now the next thing to do is to put the blades together, and I got to do. Well, I don't have to. I already did some research on it, and basically, it's a little conflicting what the colors they're calling for on the blades up here. Basically, they want you to paint one side of this, which is a C311, and that is. C311 is a gray. Is that gray? That's that camouflage gray. And I don't agree with that. I think that's too dark. This is supposed to be the top of the blade. And I mean, it's a light gray, but to me that top of that blade should be a brighter white. So I'm not going to use that for the top of the blade. What I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to use the same thing I'm using for the underbody of Airwolf. I'm just going to use this insignia white on the top. It's a little bit of an off-white, but it's still, when you put it up against a black, something else that's dark, it looks perfectly white. So I think I'm going to do that. It's either that or leave the blades painted as they are. They look pretty good in the primer. And you can do that, it's fine. You don't have to paint over the primer, because with this primer I'm going to do is put that matte coating over it anyway, that matte clear coat. So that's not going to matter. But this underside, the underside, they want you to do a mixture. They want you to do 50% of the H2 and 50% of the H53, which is H2 is your black, and H53 is the neutral gray. So I'm going to put those mixtures together and see what it looks like. And because it should be kind of dark, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. It's kind of hard to tell in a lot of pictures, because obviously the underside of the blade isn't getting a whole lot of light. And so I'm going to mix those colors together, and we'll take a look at it, and we'll come back once I get them mixed up. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so I got these painted up, and this is the color it comes up as if you paint it by the instructions. It's kind of a darker gray. I don't know why they have you mix them. I'm sure you could have just used a dark gray on there and gotten the same effect. So don't know if that's screen correct or not. I guess somebody can let me know that knows better than I do. I've been rewatching the episodes on Peacock, and from usually it's the rotors are usually turning when you see it on there, and the photos aren't very clear, so I can tell it's a darker color. I just don't know how dark. So hopefully that's correct. But if somebody has a better reference, let me know, and I can always repaint it if I need to. But at any rate, those are all painted. Again, that was just mixing the neutral gray, and I used a flat black to do that, because I didn't want to use a gloss. I didn't want to use it to be too shiny. But anyway, mix these in equal amounts together, and I mix a little bit of the Mr. Color leveling thinner to kind of thin it out some for the airbrush. So Boyd over at Trekworks recommended I try it, and I've tried it and I love it, and I've used it ever since. So that's the thinner I use, is the Mr. Color leveling thinner. So at any rate, those are done. Those are ready to go. I've left them like a bright white on top, because to me that's how they look in the pictures and on screen. But anyway, so we're on to the next part. This is the final assembly for this stage anyway. So we need this is part 39, which I've already cut out, and that's the last part we need on this sprue. So we can put this to the side. And I will say one thing. There's some two little pieces here that we got to put on next. And I'm really surprised that they didn't just go ahead and mold this on there, but it's a testament to the detail that Aoshima put into this model, that it's such a small part that you've got to put on here to add detail. But you are going to need a pair of tweezers for this probably. It'd be very hard to do without a pair of tweezers, I would imagine. So I've got my fine point tweezers here, and just got to put this part on here. I'll hold it over my table so in case I drop it, because it is a pretty small part. If I lose it, probably not going to find it again. So anyway, I already put the other one on just to save a little time. So bring my light over here. So that's how we look. We've got those, and my camera doesn't focus. I am going to get a new camera set up at some point so I can focus a little better on this stuff. But you can see that little part I added right there on both sides. So that's in place. And the last thing we need to do is get parts, was a 16 and 15. And we'll cut these off the sprue. Sorry, dropping stuff. But we'll cut these off the sprue. And with that, that's the last part we need off of the sprue for this stage anyway. Come here, just clean this up a little bit. Alright, so we got this cleaned up. And the next thing we've got to do is this part here. I don't think it matters which way this goes. It's not specific, direction specific. It looks like it's the same either way. This part's going to fit onto the blade just like that. So we'll take some glue. Sorry guys, my cat's going a little crazy right now. He wants out, and he chose to stay in, so he's stuck here for now unless he starts creating too much of an issue. So glue that on in place, and do our other side here. And yes, if you're wondering, this is an old and unused dome part for the back end of my 1350 original series Enterprise that I ended up not needing to use, and it's making a pretty good little cup for my glue right now. So we'll do this one. Alright, so we've got those glued in place, and that's what we're looking like. So we're almost there. But I'm going to let that set up for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll add on these final parts, and that'll be it for this section. So give me a minute and we'll be back. Alright guys, so I'll give me a couple minutes just to set up. Now remember, I'm using super glue, or CA glue. It's the same difference. But so it doesn't take long for this to set up. So all we got to do now is add these last two parts on here. And again, I don't think it really matters which goes on which side. They look like they're pretty much the same part. There. Yeah, they look like they're pretty much the same. This last one on now. Alright, I think it's pretty good. So we have it. There is our main rotor. And of course there's some decals, I believe, that go on the top here. But should come together real nice. I'm really liking the detail that Aoshima's put into this model. And so there we go. So that's the first stage done. And I think that's pretty much going to be what we're going to do for this episode. Obviously I'm not going to be able to do a stage for each episode because especially the interior, when we get to that, that's probably going to take a couple episodes to do. There's a lot of work to do on this interior. Like I said, the difference between this and the AMT model, or the biggest difference, other than the detail that they really go into with this, is the fact that you've got this back area where Dom sits that you've got to do up now. And so I've got some ideas for this. This is going to take a couple of episodes probably just to do this. I've got some lighting I want to do on the inside. Going to try to do some little trick lighting and light up these panels, kind of like you know, if you've ever done the bridge on one of the 1350 builds, where you try to backlight those panels. That's what I'm going to try to do with this. I've done some tests with it. It looks like I should be able to do that. So really looking forward to doing that and seeing how that turns out. But that'll be the next thing that we start working on in the next episode, is the interior, and get that all done. So looking forward to that. But at any rate, that's going to do it for this episode. Hopefully you guys are finding this helpful, and I know it's kind of probably a bit boring for a lot of you guys because I'm going into a lot more detail than a lot of you guys probably need me to. But at any rate, you know, let me know. Let me know how this is. If you guys want me to continue to go into detail like this, or if maybe I need to speed it up. But keep in mind, I'm trying to do this for guys that maybe haven't built a model before, that want to do this model when it gets its reissue in November. And I want to make sure, you know, that I get as many people as possible that can do this model, and maybe get some people into modeling. You know, maybe you do that model and you're interested in doing some other models. You know, like I said, Andrew Probert, he did a lot of Star Trek models. The refit, he did the Enterprise D in the Next Generation, and a lot of other things in Star Trek. So Airwolf wasn't the only thing he worked on, and there was a number of other. He did Street Hawk, if anybody ever remembers watching that. I remember watching that when I was a kid. But at any rate, I want to wrap this up, and thank you again to my sponsors. They don't really do anything with Airwolf, but they do a lot of sci-fi model stuff. So thank you again to Lake Monster Details, and thank you again to G-Cows for sponsoring these videos and making, hopefully getting this word out, and hopefully everybody starts picking up models and starts doing them again. You know, I know not as many people do them as they did when I was a kid. A lot of video games and stuff like that now. But at any rate, thank everybody for watching. Please, if you find any of this information helpful, hit that like button below. Leave me a comment if you feel entitled to. But other than that, please, if you want to get these updates, hit that subscribe button below, and you'll get these updates every time I put out a new episode. So again, thank you everybody for watching. Until next time, keep modeling.